My name is Elena Voss. I'm 30 years old, and I watched my mother-in-law get arrested in my own living room at 11 o'clock at night, in handcuffs, after she staged a fake home invasion to try to take my newborn baby from me. But this story doesn't start there. It starts 8 months before that night, in a dining room in Brookline, Massachusetts, where a woman with pale pink nails and hazel eyes looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she hadn't ordered. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. The first time I met Patricia Whitmore, she hugged me too long and assessed me too thoroughly. I was 27, a pediatric nurse at County General. I'd been dating her son Daniel for 8 months, and meeting his parents felt like a threshold, not a formality. There's a difference. A threshold is something you can't uncross. She pulled back from the hug and held me at arm's length, hands cool and manicured on my shoulders, nails a pale pink that probably had a name like ballet slipper. Her eyes were hazel, like Daniel's. But where his were soft and searching, hers were calculating. The difference between a window and a mirror. "Daniel tells me you're a nurse," she said. "How admirable. Such hard work." She said hard work, the way some people say meth addiction, with sympathetic horror wrapped in a costume of compassion. I smiled. "Thank you. I love it. The kids especially." "Children are everything," she agreed. And then she turned to her husband Richard, who stood by the fireplace like a decorative object, a man who had perfected the art of present absence. Physically there, emotionally outsourced to his wife's management. Dinner was performance art. Patricia had prepared everything Daniel loved, and she mentioned casually that she'd called his office to confirm his favorite dessert. I noticed Daniel didn't flinch at his mother calling his workplace. I noticed he didn't mention that I'd offered to bring a dish, and she'd insisted it wasn't necessary. I noticed, and I filed it away, because nurses are trained to notice everything and react to almost nothing. Halfway through dinner, she asked about my parents. "Not in the picture," I said. My mother was alive, technically, but we'd been estranged since I was 19. Her alcoholism. My refusal to enable it. I was raised mostly by my grandmother. She passed 2 years ago. "Oh, you poor thing." Her hand flew to her chest. "No wonder you gravitated toward caring professions. You must have such a need to belong somewhere." I felt the barb beneath the balm. Needy, desperate, grateful. "I was lucky," I said, meeting her eyes. "My grandmother taught me that family is what you build, not what you're born into." Patricia's smile didn't falter, but something behind it did. A door closing. An assessment reaching its conclusion. "How modern of you," she said. In the car home, Daniel was euphoric. "They loved you. Mom said you were refreshingly direct. That's her highest compliment." "She said I was modern," I pointed out. "Same thing?" He laughed. He genuinely laughed. "She just wants me to be happy. That's all that matters to her." I looked at him. This sweet, earnest man who built model airplanes on weekends and cried at ASPCA commercials and genuinely believed his mother was a harmless eccentric. I loved him. But I was already learning that loving Daniel came with a subscription service. Monthly installments of Patricia, auto-renewing, cancel anytime. Terms and conditions apply. "She's very involved," I said carefully. "She's just protective." After my brother died, he stopped, drew a breath. "She's just protective." I knew about the brother, Jason, car accident at 16. Patricia had been driving. The accident had happened 15 years ago, but in the Whitmore house it felt current. Jason's photos everywhere, his room preserved like a museum. I understood then that I wasn't being evaluated as a partner. I was being evaluated as a replacement. Someone grateful enough, dependent enough, controllable enough to never leave. I should have run. But I was 27, and I loved him, and I thought love was a renovation project. I didn't understand yet that some people don't want to be fixed. They want to be followed. We married 18 months later. Small ceremony, City Hall. Patricia had wanted a church wedding, a guest list of 200. She cried actual tears when we declined. "She'll come around," Daniel said, as he always said. She didn't come around. She came in. The pregnancy was unplanned but welcome. When the test showed positive, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried for 15 minutes, not from joy or fear, but from the overwhelming specificity of it. A person in there, a person who would need me to be smarter, stronger, more aware than I'd ever been. Daniel called his parents before I could suggest we wait for the first trimester. Patricia arrived within 2 hours with a casserole, a list of obstetricians she'd researched, and a nursery color scheme she'd already designed. "Blue is classic," she said, walking into our spare room without invitation. "But I'm thinking sage. I know a designer in Back Bay who could—" "Patricia." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "We haven't thought about the nursery yet. I'm 8 weeks." She turned to me, head tilted, eyes soft with something that was not softness. "Of course. I just want to help." "You have no mother, no sisters. I know how overwhelming this must be for someone with your background." "Your background. Same sympathetic horror. Different costume. This baby is Whitmore blood," she said, and placed her hand on my stomach without asking. I felt my entire body recoil. I removed her hand, gently, firmly. "The baby is half me, Patricia. And this is my home. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we need boundaries." The performance that followed was masterful. The wounded retreat, the martyred sigh, the meaningful glance at Daniel that said, "You'll pay for this later." She swept out, and Daniel turned to me with conflicted eyes. "That was harsh," he said. She touched my stomach without asking. "She's excited. She lost Jason. This is her second chance. Can't you just let her in a little?" I wanted to scream, but I was pregnant and exhausted, and I loved this man. So I said, "I'll try." That was my first real mistake. Not marrying him, not getting pregnant, but agreeing to try with a woman whose definition of compromise was, you give, she takes. I kept a list. In a paper notebook with a marbled cover I bought at a drugstore for $3.99. I wrote dates and incidents, though I didn't know why at first. Just instinct. The same instinct that made me double-check medication dosages and trust my gut when a child's vitals looked fine, but felt wrong. September 3rd. Patricia rearranged nursery furniture during a visit while I was at work. Daniel let her in with his key. September 17th. Patricia told my colleague Sarah that I was struggling with the pregnancy. Sarah asked if I was okay. I wasn't struggling. I was fine. October 5th. Patricia accidentally opened my mail. A letter from my OB. October 12th. Found Patricia going through my medical records on the kitchen table. She'd taken my file from my bag. "Just wanted to understand your history, dear. For the baby's sake." That was the breaking point. My HIV test, my genetic screening, my history of depression in college, laid open on my kitchen table like a library book. "Get out," I said with the flat voice I used when a parent was hysterical and I needed them to listen. "Get out of my home. Do not come back until I invite you." She left without apology. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, hands shaking. Then I opened my laptop and searched. Best hidden cameras for home security. Not paranoia. Preparation. I'd spent too many years in situations where the only person who would save me was me. My grandmother had taught me that hope was lovely, but planning was survival. I ordered 2 cameras. White, unobtrusive, cloud-backed, motion-activated. One for the nursery, one for the living room because Patricia had a key and I needed to know when she used it. I installed them on my day off. Testing the nursery angle on my phone, I felt a twist of guilt. This is paranoid. Then I remembered the medical records. This is necessary. The living room camera I hid behind a ceramic vase my grandmother had made, the lens peering through a gap in the painted flowers. I told Daniel about neither camera. This was my insurance. My preparation for a disaster I couldn't name but could feel building. Pressure dropping before a storm. At the baby shower Patricia hosted, I smiled until my face hurt. I opened gifts I didn't want. And when I went to the bathroom to cry for 5 minutes, I heard Patricia in the hallway, talking to her friend Margaret. Just don't think she's stable enough. Her mother is an alcoholic. Runs in families. I worry about the baby's safety. I stood in that bathroom with my hand on my belly and felt something shift. Not anger. Anger is hot, and this was cold. This was resolution. I went back to the party. I smiled. I thanked everyone. And when we got home, I added a third camera. Audio only, hidden in my purse, for environments I couldn't otherwise control. I was no longer preparing for possibility. I was preparing for inevitability. I have to pause here for a second. Have you ever had a family member go through your private medical records without your permission, and then had the nerve to call it concern? Drop a comment below if you know how this feels, and let's keep going. The incidents kept escalating. My diamond earrings vanished from the bathroom. My prenatal vitamins were replaced with generics. Someone had transferred my prescription to a pharmacy owned by one of Patricia's friends. Then a concerned call to my supervisor, Patricia pretending to be my mother, asking if the hospital had resources for pregnant nurses showing signs of depression. I played the purse audio recording for Mara, my best friend from college, now a public defender in Boston. I watched her face shift from concern to fury. "This is harassment," she said. "Documented, patterned, escalating. You need a restraining order." And say what? That my mother-in-law is mean? And lose Daniel? He still thinks she's trying. If I go nuclear, I'm the paranoid daughter-in-law keeping a grandmother from her grandchild. Mara took my hand. "Elle, you're documenting everything. What are you waiting for?" I didn't have an answer yet. I just knew that Patricia was building something, and I needed to see the whole structure before I could dismantle it. "Keep recording," Mara said. "And the second you feel physically threatened, you call me. Day or night." The estate planning conversation happened on a gray November Sunday at the Brookline house. "Your father and I have been reviewing our estate plans," Patricia announced. "We've decided to establish a trust for our grandchild, managed by the child's guardian until age 25. I felt the shift before I understood it. "Guardian? In the unlikely event that one parent is unable to fulfill their duties," Richard said, "we want to ensure the child's security isn't compromised by instability." "Instability," I repeated. "Elena's family history," he said. "The alcoholism. It's nothing personal." "It feels personal," I said. She looked at me then, and I saw it. Not vague suspicion anymore. A specific, structured intention to remove me from my child's life. The trust was leverage. The instability was the weapon. And she was laying it out in her living room, confident that Daniel would choose peace over confrontation, as he always did. "I think we should go," I said, standing. My back ached. My feet were swollen. "Elena, sit down," Patricia said, and her mask slipped entirely. "We're family. You don't get to just leave when you're uncomfortable." "I do, actually," I said. "This is my body, my child, my life you're discussing like a stock portfolio. And I don't consent to this conversation." I walked out. Daniel followed eventually after murmured apologies. In the car, he defended her again. "She's thinking ahead. The trust is generous." And I said what I'd been afraid to say for months. "She's thinking about how to take our child, Daniel. Your mother is trying to destroy me, and you're helping her." He didn't deny it. We drove home in silence, and that night I slept in the nursery on a pile of blankets, hand on my belly, watching the camera feed on my phone. The next morning I called a divorce attorney. Not to file. To understand. To know my rights if Patricia made her move. The attorney, Gloria, listened to my documentation and whistled softly. "You've been thorough. Most people in your position don't start recording until after the damage is done." "I've been in difficult positions before," I said. "I learned. Keep recording," she said. "Be the calm, competent nurse she claims you aren't. Because when this goes to court, and it will, you want the contrast to be stark." "When?" I repeated. "When?" she confirmed. Patricia's campaign intensified. She called my mother, sober 6 months, our contact limited to birthday cards, and told her I was struggling. I found out when my mother left a voicemail I almost deleted unheard. Patricia had found my weakest point, my guilt about my mother, my fear of becoming her. Not to help me, to destabilize me. I called my mother back. It was awkward, painful, full of landmines, but I told her the truth, and I refused to let Patricia define my relationships. Then my closest work friend Sarah pulled me aside. Patricia Whitmore has been calling people on your unit, saying you're fragile. Dr. Chen asked if you should be on lighter duties. Admin sent around a memo about supporting pregnant staff. She was building a paper trail of concern. Evidence that I was unstable, unfit, unable to care for my own child, and doing it so gradually that anyone who objected would sound paranoid. Thank you for telling me, I said. If she contacts anyone else, let me know. I'm documenting everything. That night, I started sleeping with my phone recording audio. I started rehearsing my legal rights in the shower, in the car, in the dark nursery at 3 a.m. I have the right to remain silent. I have the right to an attorney. I do not consent to a search. I want my lawyer present. I said them until they were reflex. Until I could invoke them while terrified, while exhausted, while holding my newborn child and facing police officers who'd been told I was dangerous. I didn't know why I was preparing for police. I just knew that I was. It happened on a Thursday. Daniel was at work. I was reviewing camera footage from the past week. The living room camera had captured something. Patricia and Richard in my home on Tuesday afternoon. They'd entered while I was out using Daniel's key, and they'd spoken in low voices the camera's audio barely caught. The window in the nursery won't work unless she's in the house when they come. Daniel's out of town that week, so just make sure the insurance. I watched the footage 3 times. My hands shook. I called Mara, then Gloria. Played them both the footage. Showed them my documentation. This is either a home invasion they're planning to stage, Gloria said slowly, or an actual home invasion. Either way, you need to not be in that house when Daniel's away. If I leave, they win, I said. They get to say I'm unstable running away. What if they stage something and claim I did it? Then go to a hotel. Or I stay, I said. I stay, and I let them show their whole hand. Because if they stage something and I have footage of the staging, that's not just harassment. That's conspiracy. That's criminal. We planned for 3 hours. Gloria reviewed my legal rights. Mara agreed to be on call. I upgraded cloud storage so no footage could be deleted. I verified cameras had full battery backup. And I told my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, 73, sharp as a scalpel, who had never liked Patricia, that I was expecting some family drama and asked her to watch for anything unusual. In the dark nursery, I sat in the rocking chair and whispered to my belly, "Your mama sees the trap. Your mama has a plan. Your mama is going to keep you safe no matter what." The baby kicked, hard. I chose to believe that was agreement. Daniel left on a Monday morning. He kissed me at the door, his hand lingering on my belly, his eyes worried. "Are you sure you'll be okay alone?" "I'll be fine," I said. And I almost meant it. Patricia called at 10 a.m. "Dear, why don't you come for dinner tonight? Richard and I worry about you alone so close to your due date." Too soon. Too obvious. But I agreed. I needed to see how she was staging it, what role she expected me to play. I dressed carefully, packed my purse with the audio recorder, my phone, and a card with my legal rights written on it. Mrs. Chen caught me in the hallway. "You look like you're going to war, Elena." "Just dinner with the in-laws." Her eyes were knowing. "Call me if you need anything. Any hour." The Brookline house looked more imposing in the fading November light. Patricia answered in an apron over her silk blouse, a costume of domesticity. Dinner was elaborate, her conversation constant and filling, designed to occupy space so no one could hear the silence underneath. After dinner, she led me to Jason's room, the shrine. She talked about second chances and Whitmore blood and what it means to need a fresh start. I said quietly that this baby was mine and Daniel's, not a replacement for anyone. not a possession. We went back downstairs. Richard had disappeared. I could hear him in the basement, moving things. Patricia kept me in the living room with coffee and dessert, talking about nothing, keeping me occupied. At 9 p.m., I insisted on leaving. She hugged me at the door, her grip too tight. I pulled away, walked to my car, and sat breathing for 5 minutes. When I got home and reviewed the living room camera footage, I saw it. Richard in my home while I was at their house. A perfect alibi. 40 minutes inside my condo. The nursery. The window. Measuring something. I called Mara. They were here. While I was at dinner. But I'm not running. If I run, I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. If I stay, document, and prove what they're doing, I end it. Forever. Then I'm coming over. No, if you're here, they won't act. They need me alone, vulnerable, isolated. That's the story they're building. I hung up before she could argue. Then I sat in the nursery and waited. It happened on a Wednesday night. I was in the nursery at 10 p.m., folding baby clothes by lamplight, when a sharp crack came from downstairs. Glass breaking, a thud. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, staged. I didn't move. I sat in the rocking chair, hands on my belly, and watched the camera's red light blink. "Elena?" Patricia's voice pitched high with theatrical terror. "Elena, is that you? There's someone in the house!" More footsteps. More crashing. Richard's voice. "Get back! Get away from her!" They were staging a robbery, pinning the violence on me, waiting for me to come downstairs so they could complete whatever story they'd constructed. I pressed the button that sent an emergency alert to Mara with my location. Then I walked to the nursery door and locked it. I could hear the struggle below, furniture overturning. Patricia screaming about weapons and danger and call the police. Someone call the police. And I sat back down in the rocking chair, placed my hands on my belly, and waited. I was not panicking. I was present. I was prepared. I had proof. And I had myself. The police arrived at 10:47 p.m. When the knock came. "Police! Open the door!" I stood, walked to the door, unlocked it slowly, hands visible, face showing nothing but calm competence. The officer who faced me was young, with tired eyes and a hand near his weapon. Behind him, 2 more officers. And beyond them, Patricia and Richard, disheveled and dramatic, performing with the commitment of community theater veterans. "Elena Voss?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of my voice. "I'm unarmed. I'm pregnant. I'm 36 weeks. I have not left this room in over an hour. We've received a report of a home invasion. The caller stated you were the intruder, that you'd assaulted them and stolen property. I live here," I said, which felt like the stupidest, truest thing I'd ever said. "This is my home. Those are my in-laws. They do not live here. They entered tonight while I was in this room. I have security footage, continuous, cloud-backed. I'd like to invoke my right to an attorney, and I'd like that footage preserved immediately." The officer blinked. This was clearly not the script he'd been given. "I've been listening to them stage this home invasion for the past hour," I continued. "The footage will show exactly who broke what, who called when, and who was actually where. My attorney's name is Gloria Reyes." I gestured toward the window, where Mrs. Chen's lights had come on moments after the police arrived. "My witness across the hall saw my in-laws enter this house with a key earlier this evening while I was upstairs." Patricia's face had gone the color of old cauliflower. She hadn't checked the nursery. She'd assumed I was sleeping or panicking. She'd never once considered that I might be prepared. "Ma'am?" the officer said, his hand moving from his weapon to his radio. "Can you access this footage?" "Immediately," I said. "The camera is in this room. The cloud backup requires my biometric authentication. I consent to showing you everything." I turned and pointed to the small white dome on the bookshelf. "This camera has been recording for 11 weeks. The living room camera captured everything downstairs. I have timestamps. I have audio. I have proof." "Officers," Patricia tried, her voice cracking. "She's lying. She's been diagnosed with—" "I have my prenatal records in my purse," I said calmly. No mental health diagnoses. No instability. Just a pregnant woman who installed security cameras because her in-laws kept entering her home without permission and going through her private medical records. I looked at Patricia then, really looked at her, and I saw the exact moment she understood. The moment she realized that her months of careful planning, the staged concern, the calculated isolation, the paper trail of instability she'd built around me like a fence, was about to be dismantled by a $79 camera and a woman she had catastrophically underestimated. "Preserve the footage," I said to the officer, "before anyone can suggest it was altered." He nodded, calling for a supervisor, for tech support, for the machinery of actual investigation to replace the machinery of assumption. "I'd also like to report a breaking and entering," I added. "My in-laws used my husband's key without my permission. They caused property damage. They made false police reports. And I believe they conspired to frame me for crimes I did not commit in order to gain custody of my unborn child." The words hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. Patricia made a sound, half sob, half shriek, and collapsed against Richard, who looked like a man watching his entire life detonate in slow motion. I didn't smile. I just stood there, 36 weeks pregnant in my nursery, hand on my belly, camera blinking red, and I thought, the trap has a door. And I just locked it from the inside. The footage review took place in my living room at 1:15 a.m. A sergeant had arrived, 20 years on the force, weary patience. Mara sat beside me like a bodyguard in business casual. Timestamp 9:52 p.m. Patricia and Richard entering with Daniel's key. Richard carrying a small crowbar hidden inside his jacket. Patricia carrying a bag. At 10:03 p.m., Richard broke the nursery window from inside. He placed the crowbar on the floor, arranged glass fragments around it like a stage set. At 10:07 p.m., Patricia called 911, voice breathless with feigned terror. At 10:23 p.m., Patricia called again. "She's barricaded herself in the nursery. She has weapons! She's threatening to hurt herself, the baby, everyone." We switched to the nursery footage. There I was, sitting in the rocking chair, folding baby clothes. The window breaks off screen. You can see me look up, but not panic. Check my phone. Lock the door. Sit back down, hands on belly, waiting. "I didn't leave this room," I said. "I didn't touch them. I didn't break anything. I didn't steal anything. I just waited. And recorded." The sergeant nodded. "Based on what I've seen, I'm recommending no charges against you. And I'm recommending we consider charges against your in-laws for filing a false police report, criminal mischief, and possibly conspiracy." Richard broke within the hour. It was Patricia's idea. She's been planning it for months. The trust, the custody, the narrative. She said Elena was unstable. I just went along. I always went along. It's easier than... He collapsed into weeping. An officer led him away, reading him his rights. Patricia didn't break. She sat in the back of the patrol car staring straight ahead, her face a mask of furious dignity. Just a woman who had lost everything because she couldn't bear to share. Daniel arrived at Mara's apartment the following evening, his face gray with exhaustion. I told him everything. The cameras, the months of documentation, the staged robbery, the footage, the arrests. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He just sat, growing paler as the narrative he'd constructed, loving mother, difficult wife, misunderstandings that can be smoothed over, crumbled into dust. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally. "About the cameras, any of it? Would you have believed me? Or would you have said she was trying, that I was oversensitive? How many times did I try to set limits and you asked me to just let her in a little?" He put his head in his hands and wept. Not for sympathy, with the broken honesty of a man who'd finally seen himself clearly and didn't like the view. "I don't know who to be without her approval," he admitted. "She lost Jason. I couldn't let her lose me, too." "So you let her lose me instead," I said. "You let her plan to destroy me. And you called it keeping peace. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Therapy, no contact with her ever again. Just don't leave me, please." I looked at him, this sweet, broken man who loved me but couldn't protect me. I felt the old pull, the urge to take on the emotional labor of his growth as I'd taken on so much else. But I was different now. The woman who'd sat in the nursery, trusting her preparation over her panic, that woman was done pretending. I need time, I said. The baby comes in 2 weeks. I need to be safe and stable and ready. You can help by getting your own therapist, by being honest about whether you can truly go no contact or whether you'll just hide it better next time. He flinched. He nodded. He left. The hearing happened 2 weeks later, 3 days after I gave birth. Patricia's attorney had filed for emergency grandparents' rights, using the incident as evidence of my instability. I was sore, bleeding, my body still reeling. My daughter, Sophia, named for my grandmother, was at Mara's apartment with Mrs. Chen, who had appointed herself honorary grandmother with fierce protectiveness. But I was there, in a wheelchair, in professional clothes that didn't quite fit my postpartum body, with Gloria beside me and a folder of documentation thick enough to stop a bullet. Patricia was there in an orange jumpsuit, her hair graying at the roots. She looked smaller than I remembered, less imposing. Just a woman who had lost everything because she couldn't bear to share. Gloria played the footage. The courtroom was silent. Then she called me to testify. I am a pediatric nurse, I said from the stand, my voice steady. No criminal record. No history of mental illness. No substance abuse. I installed security cameras because my in-laws repeatedly entered without permission, went through my medical records, and told my employer I was unstable. I documented everything because I was afraid. And because I'd learned that when you're alone, documentation is the only protection you have. Why didn't you leave? Patricia's attorney asked. If you were so afraid? Because leaving would have been surrender, I said. She'd already told people I might abandon my home, my husband, my sanity. If I'd run, she'd have used it against me. The only way to stop her was to face her, document her, and prove the truth. And the hidden cameras? Isn't that paranoid? I looked at Patricia and felt no anger. Only the deep sadness of someone who'd had to become suspicious to survive. Paranoia is fear without cause, I said. I had cause. The cameras weren't paranoid. They were prepared, and they saved my life. The judge ruled within the hour. No grandparents' rights. Permanent restraining order. Full custody to me. I wheeled out into the November afternoon. Mara was waiting with the car and coffee and the promise of my daughter's warm weight in my arms. I was free. I was vindicated. I was safe. But freedom didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a long, terrible book. One I'd had to write myself, in blood and fear and sleepless nights. You're okay, Mara said. I'm alive, I corrected. I'm not sure I'm okay yet, but I will be. For Sophia. Patricia was sentenced to 18 months, minimum security. The Whitmore name bought her that much. Richard died before the trial, a heart attack while serving house arrest. Weak to the end, in every sense. Daniel and I divorced when Sophia was 1. Not because he failed entirely. He was trying, really trying. But because trying wasn't enough. Every time I looked at him, I saw the years of silence, the pleas to just let her in. The choices he made again and again to protect his mother's comfort over my safety. He didn't fight me on custody. He accepted supervised visitation. He committed to therapy. He was capable of loving his daughter, and I believed that. I still do. We signed the papers on a Tuesday. He cried. I didn't. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I'd already felt everything. Alone, in the dark, waiting for the knock that changed everything. I sold the condo. I took a loss and didn't care. I wanted the distance. The new apartment in Cambridge became home. I painted the walls colors I chose, sage green in the living room, soft yellow in Sophia's room, deep blue in my bedroom where I could sleep without dreaming of police lights. I installed a security system with passwords only I knew. I joined a support group for survivors of family sabotage. It met Thursday nights in a church basement. Women whose mothers had stolen their identities. Men whose fathers had framed them for embezzlement. People who'd learned, as I had, that the most dangerous predators wear familiar faces. I started an anonymous blog, sharing stories from the group and from my own experience about coercive control, family sabotage, the slow and insidious ways people can destroy you while claiming to love you. The response was overwhelming. You saved my life. I installed cameras last month. I have proof now. I'm leaving. Your story gave me permission to believe myself. I thought I was crazy. I'm not. Thank you for helping me know. 2 years after the robbery that wasn't, I found the old box in my closet. The paper journal with the marbled cover, the $3.99 drugstore purchase that had started everything. I sat on the floor and opened it. My handwriting, cramped and urgent. September 3rd. Patricia rearranged nursery furniture while I was at work. October 12th. Medical records. She went through my medical records. She's not done. I know she's not done. November 3rd. Daniel leaves Monday. I think they'll act then. I've rehearsed my rights. I've checked the cameras. I'm scared. I'm so scared. But I'm not helpless. I'm not alone. I have proof. I have preparation. I have myself. I read until my eyes burned. Then I closed the book and held it to my chest, feeling the weight of who I'd been, who I'd become, who I was still becoming. I didn't burn the journal. I put it in Sophia's memory box alongside her first shoes, her hospital bracelet, the photo of her first smile. And I added a note, written on the back of my grandmother's recipe for chicken soup. My darling Sophia, I hope you never need this story. I hope you grow up in a world where people are kind, where trust is safe, where the people who claim to love you actually do. But if you ever find yourself in a place where something feels wrong, where the floor tilts beneath your feet and everyone tells you it's fine, you're imagining it, you're too sensitive, you're crazy. I want you to remember this. Your mama saw the trap. Your mama walked in anyway. Your mama had a plan. Trust your gut before you trust anyone else's story about you. Prepare before you're ready, and never ever let anyone make you feel small for protecting yourself. I love you. I see you. I am always, always on your side. Mama, I thought about my grandmother, who taught me that survival was an act of love, that protecting yourself was not selfish, that the only person guaranteed to be on your side was you, and that once you truly believed that, you became capable of building something real, something yours, something no one could stage or steal or dismantle. Later, I opened my laptop and wrote the night's blog post. About cameras, the hidden ones and the metaphorical ones. The ways we learn to observe our own lives, to document our realities, to trust our perceptions when someone powerful insists we're wrong. I installed cameras because I was afraid, I wrote. But I kept them because they taught me something I needed to learn. My experience was real. What I saw, what I heard, what I felt, it mattered. It counted. And no amount of someone else's narrative could erase it. The footage didn't just expose Patricia. It validated me. It said, you were right. You weren't crazy. You saw what you saw, and you were right to believe yourself. That's what I want for everyone reading this. Not cameras necessarily, but the practice of believing yourself, of documenting your reality, of building a case for your own sanity that no one can dismantle. Because when the world tells you you're wrong, when family, friends, partners, systems all align against your perception, the most radical act is to say, I know what I know. I saw what I saw, and I will not let you replace my truth with yours. I published the post. Closed the laptop. Outside, snow was falling, soft and silent and new. I watched it settle over the city, covering everything in temporary white. It would melt. It always did. The world would show its colors again, its dirt and its damage, and its stubborn, persistent life. And I would be here, watching, prepared, present, not because I expected disaster, but because I'd learned that readiness is a form of peace. That the camera, the journal, the locked door, they aren't prisons. They are choices. Assertions of autonomy in a world that constantly tries to take it away. The snow fell. The city breathed. And I stood at the window, warm and safe and awake, knowing that whatever came next, I would face it with eyes open and hands steady and the hard-won certainty that my perceptions mattered. That I mattered. That the lens, finally, was turned toward truth. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been told you were imagining it, that you were too sensitive, that you were the problem, I want to ask you something. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed? Would you have opened that door? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, share it with them. Check the description for another story just like this one. Until next time, trust yourself. Document everything. And remember, preparation is not paranoia. It's power.